Okay, I'm very excited about today. It's the first day of the rest of your bagpiping journey. We are starting on Gracenotes, and Gracenotes are the basis for all the other embellishments, and this is just something that you will be learning embellishments and then relearning embellishments to make them better and cleaner the rest of your bagpiping life. So this is really exciting. So we're looking at page 12 in the book. We've got some examples at the top of Gracenotes. So just looking at that little tiny staff of music, you'll notice that we have the normal notes, all of which are written as, there are 4 A's there. A, 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 A. But in between, before and in between, there are these tiny little notes. Those are Gracenotes. In bagpipe music, in most other music, if you looked at a sheet of piano music, for example, you'd see that the melody, the notes, sometimes they're stabs, the lines, sometimes go down and sometimes they go up. And that's mostly just based on how high on that staff the note is placed. You know, once it gets high enough, it makes sense to make the stick on the note go down, and when it's low enough, it makes sense to make the stick go up, basically. In bagpipe music, partly to help us differentiate between Gracenotes and other embellishments and the melody line will always have its little sticks going down. Gracenotes embellishments will always have their little stick going up. Also, Gracenotes embellishments will always have 3 little flags. Well, I say always. I guess that's a pretty modern standard. If you're looking at like handwritten music or something, that might actually not be the case, but for the most part, you'll have 3 little flags. So, here's a quick little music theory lesson. You've seen half notes. Those are an open circle with a stick. You've seen quarter notes. We're looking at some right now. That's a closed circle with a stick. Eighth notes are a closed circle with a stick and a little flag. 16th notes, so we're just dividing everything in half here, they have 2 flags. 32nd notes have 3 flags. 64th notes would have 4 flags. 128th notes would have 5 flags. I don't know if that's entirely theoretical though. I've played a few different instruments. I've never played an instrument. I've never had a piece of music in front of me that had a note that had to move quite that fast. But you can see, like every time you cut something in half, you add a flag. So with embellishments and Gracenotes, there are usually going to be 3 flags. That doesn't really matter. You might have like Gracenotes around 32nd notes. I think that's probably pretty rare. But if you did, what am I trying to say? Basically what I'm trying to say is that Gracenotes don't necessarily have mathematical value. They are, well, just look at the description. Let's scroll down on this page. So Gracenotes are used to separate the notes of a song. We saw that already with London Bridges. With bagpipes, you have a constant flow of air, so you can't do, let's see. Okay, so here's a bagpipe song. What song is this? If you can recognize the song, put a comment down below. If I can remember it later, I'll put it in there. But here's a bagpipe song played very simply as if we could stop air, right? So these are called staccato notes, or I'm just going to use my tongue to separate the notes here. See how we had a lot of repeated notes there, and I could use my tongue to stop the air to separate the notes. But with a constant flow of air, it's going to be like, where in my head, I want a lot of those notes to be separated, so I use Gracenotes, like this. See how I like right at the beginning and right there in the middle, I could, instead of going, I can go, wow, no, I did both. I can go, to make 3 notes instead of just one constant. Sorry, that was probably a little more involved than you needed. It's pretty straightforward. So second point on that page, Gracenotes don't really have a mathematical value. Of course, they do take up space in the song, but it's not like you're counting like 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, what beat does, like, where do I put these Gracenotes? You just think about the melody line the Gracenotes work in. There's some nuance to that, but for now, that's, you know, in simple terms, that's good. That'll work to move on with. And then Gracenotes, they're embellishments. Aside from having a utilitarian purpose to separate notes, we also use them in different combinations, which certain combinations get fancier names. You'll see that as we go on to doublings and throws and things like that. They're all just collections of Gracenotes, basically. And we use those to make the song sound fancy as well. There are different schools of thought regarding like how these different embellishments developed and stuff. I think it makes a lot of sense to look at this in an evolutionary kind of way, that you could imagine bagpipers a long time ago using very simple embellishments, basically just Gracenotes, little blips here and there, and then they put 2 or 3 together and go, hey, that sounds cool, I'll do that on the regular. And then eventually it's like, you know what, that little combination of Gracenotes, I'm just going to call that a C doubling. That's what we would call it today. There's a really cool, if you want to go down a really cool YouTube rabbit hole, look up, I'll put some links in the description for, I can't pronounce it, canntaireachd, something like that. I think it's pronounced something like canntaireachd, which, especially in relation to piobaireachd, which is another word I don't think I can pronounce correctly, nor can I spell it, is sort of an older way of learning bagpipes. Pre-written music, it would be learned orally. And so, like, it's really fun to listen to somebody sing in canttaireachd, because basically they're singing the melody line, but they're also singing, like, words for the embellishments in between notes. And there are some embellishment names that we still have in modern bagpiping that are either the canttaireachd word or they are descended from the canttaireachd word. But a lot of them have a very modern name, like this one that we're looking at is the G Gracenote. Hop over to page 13. You'll see there's an A, and we've got a little diagram that shows how to play a G Gracenote. So look at the diagrams there. You start with A, and then to get that little G Gracenote in, you do not play G, okay? It's important that you go back and do the fingerwork exercises that are previous to this chapter so you can keep ingrained in your mind how to correctly play each note on the scale if it's a melody line note. When you're doing Gracenotes, you get to cheat, and so you don't want to get so used to cheating that you then cheat on a melody note. So if this piece of music said quarter note A, quarter note G, quarter note A, we'd play it like this. Playing that G correctly with all 3 of these fingers coming up, with this pinky being up, you know, just like a G should be. But this is a G Gracenote. So we're going quarter note A to quarter note A, this. But we can't stop the air in between, so we're using a G Gracenote to separate the notes, okay? All you do for a G Gracenote is lift that pointer finger. For one, it just makes a little blip, like a little tap noise, a little tiny beep. Sounds like this. That's it. So you're not playing G, you're giving it a little G Gracenote. So why is it called a G Gracenote? The air is coming down from your mouth into your practice chanter, and as it encounters the holes, there's your high A, and then your G, F, E, etc., all the way down. The air is going to escape through the first hole that it can. And so by putting all your fingers on the chanter, you're forcing that air to go all the way down past all of these holes and come out down the bottom. And that makes a low sound. If you lift your pinky, it doesn't have to go quite as far. It gets down to here and goes, oh, there's an escape, and comes out right there. That makes a low A. If you lift both of these fingers, again, it doesn't go quite as far. And so the sound is getting higher and higher and higher based on the shorter and shorter distance that the air has to travel. And so that's why if we want to play a G, the way these holes are lined up and the way the reed works, to have that G be perfectly in tune, we don't only lift this pointer finger, because see, the air can now escape from that hole. We also lift these 2 fingers. The air is still escaping largely from this hole, but having these additional openings, not all the air gets out, you see. And so some travels down here, and that's why covering or uncovering these holes that are immediately beneath the main escape hole will affect the tuning. You see? So that's why when we play a little blip like this, we still call it a G Gracenote, because it is still escaping through the G hole, and that's going to be roughly a G. But if we could like slow time down really carefully and listen to a bagpiper playing, when they played a G Gracenote, that G would be kind of flat. But it happens so fast. This is just the way we do it, you know. So this is the way it works. So here's our low A. G Gracenote is just a little blip, and we're right there on the way already. So playing through these 2 notes with a Gracenote in the middle right here at the top of page 13. So you don't have to go straight to that short little blip. Here are a couple of things to avoid with Gracenotes. One is you don't want to lose your landing point. So this is, again, is why it's important to play through a lot of scales and stuff so you get this muscle memory so your fingers know where to land. You don't want to have your pointer finger pop up and then come down too high or too low, where you end up going like this. That's no good. You want to come right back where it belongs. So muscle memory is important, and the way you get that is just by playing a lot. Another thing is you do not want to only lift your finger a tiny bit off of the chanter. Like we've mentioned before, your big bagpipes have a lot more air moving through much bigger holes on your chanter. And so if you do something like this on the practice chanter, I have to work at it to give you an example on the practice chanter because you have to be so close to make a difference. But on the big pipes, you could be, theoretically, let's say that far off the chanter, and you're still going to mess the noise up because that air is coming out at such a speed, that's going to make it sound really funky. You got to get off the chanter and out of the way. So you got to have fingers nice and high. When I'm playing a G Gracenote, here's what it looks like. So I'm at least that far off the chanter every time. So don't only barely lift up, because what will end up happening even on your practice chanter is your finger won't move. You'll send that signal to your finger and you'll think pop up, but if you're trying to stay so close, it won't really pop up. And so you do need it to pop up. So this is what my kid's piano teacher has them do when they're learning a new note or a new chord. They do it, they go hop, 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 and they just hop on that note or on that chord over and over again. That's what we're going to do right now with this first exercise. So exercise 3.1. We're staying on low A all the way through. So all we're thinking about is our G Gracenote finger popping off. Popping up off of the chanter. So I'm going to play low A, and I'm going to do this little movement thing that I've been doing to help you know when we're going to go G Gracenote, G Gracenote, G Gracenote, G Gracenote. And first time through, we're going to let those Gracenotes be really open. So we're going to do it like this. Okay, so here we go. We're going to go through it together. Feel free to look at my fingers or look at the music, or if you need to, close your eyes to really focus. Basically, we're going to do 7 of these Gracenotes, okay? That's what it comes down to. Eventually work to where you're just looking at the music, because again, you want that hand-eye coordination to be happening. So here we go. Okay, if you need to, pause the video and run through that again. We're going to do it again, not necessarily faster, but tighter. Okay, so where we were having that G Gracenote be nice and open, dee-doo, dee-doo, we're going to tighten that a little bit. So instead, it's going to sound like this. So we're not necessarily going faster from note to note. We're just tightening up that Gracenote, making it so just the Gracenote is a bit shorter. Okay? Here we go. So just try to stick with me as we tighten it up. Okay. So you're feeling pretty good about that. We're going to do it one more time, just a little bit tighter again. Here we go. Good. So, the rest of this page is exercises that are basically the same thing. Well, not the entire rest of the page, sorry. Just the next 2 exercises are basically the same thing, but on different notes. Okay? So, exercise 3.2. You can go ahead and pause this video and go through it again very slowly with very open grace notes. It's exactly the same thing, you're just holding a different note. I'm just going to do it once here, and then same thing with exercise 3.3. But pause the video and go through it slowly if you need to warm up to where you can do it right along with me, okay? So now we're on C, and we're still, once again, we're just holding C, and we're just doing G grace notes in between, okay? Here we go with exercise 3.2. Good. Now, exercise 3.3 gets a little different. Instead of having our note that we're holding in the bottom hand, it's in the top hand. So this could be a little bit trickier. At this point, I want to remind you, as we learn these embellishments, even if you've really relaxed your grip really well through these other chapters, once we start doing, or these other exercises, once we start doing these embellishments, your fingers are going to want to tense right back up and you're going to be squeezing your chanter. And I think this becomes especially true right now when we're moving to the top hand, where we only have these 3 little points of contact, and one of them is going to be hopping up and down. The temptation is going to be to use the other 2 points of contact to really hold tight to your chanter. So take a sec to sort of stretch your fingers out. Sorry, I'm going to try to not pop my knuckles on the camera anymore. I know that can be unpleasant, especially with headphones on. But kind of stretch your hands out, give yourself a little bit of a stretch. Try to be relaxed. Again, if you can, rest your chanter on a table in front of you or on a knee or something like that. Okay, and just kind of play on your chanter. Don't play your chanter, play on your chanter. Okay, so we're holding it gently. We're going to play E with G, sorry, I just moved the wrong finger, with G grace notes in between. I'm going to turn to this angle so you can maybe have a different angle is useful. Here we go. Okay, go back and go through those a few times until it feels comfortable. You're feeling pretty good about them. And then we're going to add a little bit of complexity with the next couple exercises where the melody notes are moving with grace notes in between them.